Well, how's everybody? It's been just a crazy busy week, and usually as I come to speak to you, I have to speak to you directly from my life. I don't know how professional pastors do what they do, but I can't just go and say, get on the internet and say I need one of the 100 best sermons of all times, because like 95 of them would be mine. No. You just can't repeat everything, you know. No, I don't know how you do that. I have to speak to you from my life, and my life's been chaotic. And so I was praying last night, and I was asking God, you know, what do you want me to share out of all of this, out of this chaos? Because I don't think we go through anything that's an accident. I believe the things we go through are the foundations that make us who we are. And as we go through those things, our lives are so changed and so impacted by them. And the reason for that is so that we can share them and help others. And I really believe that God has weaved us together. Weaved? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Nobody here would have known if I wouldn't have said anything. Now, I think we're all together in this. And so I wanted to talk to you today about quitting. I think in my life in general, I've been a quitter. I just look back at the things that didn't come easy for me. And I think if it didn't come easy for me, I quit at it. I think as things got tough, especially early on, I could do just about anything I wanted to do in sports. And as I began to get older and other people began to get better, things that once were very easy for me weren't as easy anymore. So I kind of let those things drop off to the side, and I kind of quit those. I would go to a job, and if I worked for you in school, I'm sorry. Because I'd go to a job, and when I didn't like it anymore, I quit it. And I remember at the end of the year, anybody ever, and maybe I know I'm the only one, but you ever get a stack of W-2s like that at the end of the year? It's like, how many jobs did I actually have this year? And you're averaging one a month. That's a lot. So if you're averaging more than one job a month, I just want to tell you, that's a lot. Then I started college. Any of you guys ever start college? A lot of people started college. I started college. I found out that it wasn't as easy as high school was. It was a lot more expensive and not nearly as easy. It's like the more you pay, the easier it should have got, right? But it wasn't as easy, and so I didn't stick with that very long. And I saw in my life, which is weird because I wasn't that mature or I sure wasn't that intuitive, but I saw in my life that I had no stability and that things were going pretty bad, and that I kept, not sticking to things. And so I joined the Marines. Because, well, frankly, you have to stick with it. Yeah, that's a job that you don't quit. And so I had to get up and go to work every day. Well, it's that or go to prison. I had to get up and go to work every day. I had to show up, couldn't quit. And what happened to me in the Marines is I learned a lot about discipline. And not discipline I was still me, and you know me, and so me and the Marines weren't an exact fit. Because, well, frankly, I had a better way of doing things. But what I did find, though, is that even when things were tough, I could make it through. I learned that early on in the Marines going through boot camp, that it didn't matter how hard something got, you could make it through. The point or the way to do that, is to just not quit. I think I'm here to shock you today with my depth. But the way to succeed and make it through things is not to quit. I know that's deep, but I learned that in the Marines, and so I got married because, that's what everybody needs to do. And at 21, I wouldn't suggest that, by the way. How many of you guys were married before you were 21? Yeah. How many of you guys would suggest doing that? Yeah, none. Not one. So there's reasons behind that, which you could ask anybody in here about later. But it seemed like a good thing to do at the time, right? Here's what I didn't know. That everybody is not as easy to live with as I am. That's what I didn't know at the time. I thought being married was going to be like playing house. It was cool. And it was at first. It was like dating with benefits. But here's what happens. And if it hasn't happened to you yet, it will. That person you married turns out to have her or his own ideas, his own thoughts, his own way of doing things. And after a certain period of time, they no longer worship you. And things get tough. I think the way my parents raised me, and I think the discipline of being in the Marines is the only way I made it through those first 5 years of marriage or so. Celia and I had committed that when we got married, we were never, ever going to divorce. So it starts with a commitment. Now, that's all we had for a while. And if you've ever been there, you know. But we just weren't going to quit. And because of that commitment, our marriage has held up for a while, like 100 years. It's dog years. There's marriage years and then there's regular years. There's single years. Single years are regular and married years are like 100. And it's tough. It's tough having somebody with you all the time. It's tough having somebody who is the polar opposite of you with you all the time. It's tough. But I stuck it out. We stuck it out. And sticking it out is only through those bad times. If you don't stick it out through the bad times, you're never going to achieve those times where things really are good, really good, where you look back and go, man, it was so worth all the stuff. Everything I've been through is all worth it. But what I found is as life continued, and you may be there right now, that life's not always easy. Like you hit these times where things seem absolutely impossible. Your marriage isn't working like you thought it would work. Your job's not working like you thought it would work. The economy turns. What you once were making, you're no longer making. Let there be light. And it was good. Hey, how about that? Sometimes things don't work. That's the way it is. I've been through a lot in the last 10 years. We started the church about 12 years ago. And I thought church people would be the place to be, man. And what I found out was church people might be the meanest people on the face of the earth. Something about being in church just opens you up to be able to say anything you want to somebody. And I've seen my family suffer. Mostly I've seen my kids suffer, and that's what really infuriates me is when you can take a lot, but when somebody hurts your kids, you just want to terminate their rights to live. It's tough. But then at the same time, you can't say anything to anybody because that would be unpastorally, right? So you just kind of figure out, you pray a lot and you go, God, would you kill all these people? And like you're on flood, fire, it doesn't matter. Just locusts. Can you be killed by locusts? I don't know. The thing is, you pray a lot and you ask God why. And a lot of times, man, I found myself just at that place, and then you suffer in the middle of that. And you're struggling with people, and that's I do this. This is my job too. And so you struggle at your job, and you struggle in your marriage, and you're struggling financially, and you're struggling in all these places, and then things keep hitting you, and then you suffer loss, and you're like, man, I just want to quit. My thing that I say in private to my wife is, I can do this anywhere. I can do this anywhere. Have you ever said that? I can do this anywhere. I don't have to be here. And I think, if you ever daydream about quitting, and I mean quitting your job, quitting your marriage, quitting your life, quitting, packing up, going to like the most remote village in Mexico somewhere and just getting a sombrero and sitting by a building. Eating tacos. And you start daydreaming about that kind of stuff and just walking away from it all. And you're like, what's the point of all of this? Well, you're not alone. And if you've never thought that, or say you've never thought that, you're lying. You're a liar on top of all of that. If you didn't just get in a fight with your kids before you go to bed, and then you get in a fight with your wife when you get into bed, and you don't lay in that bed looking out at the car going, I could be a long ways from here in 8 hours. And they'd never find me again. I always think about that. Our country's big. There's a lot of remote places. You can disappear. And I think about stuff like that. I may be the only one, man. I have a wild imagination, but I think I could completely disappear. Just quit. And I think, man, I bet God is really, really disappointed in me. And then you start feeling like a loser about that. And so then it all starts to compound. And as I go through these times, and we all have these times where life just gets to the point of you just want to quit, man. Just throw up your hands and quit. As I was going through all this, God reminded me that I'm not in this by myself. There was these guys that followed Jesus around. We know them as the disciples. And they were young kids who followed Jesus around. He was growing them into the men that God had planned for them to be. But not only that, Jesus was here for more than to die, okay? I want you to understand this. He was here to bring about the kingdom of God. He was here to restore the world to the way God intended it to be. And in that restoration process, Jesus took the step to make things right with God. He fulfilled what it took to make things right with God. But he had these followers, and his goal with his followers was to take what he had been doing and finish the job. To take what he had been doing and take his message and take this gospel, this good news of the kingdom of heaven, and carry it forward. To transform and change and restore the world to God, to bring about the kingdom of God, not just in Jerusalem, but into Judea and Samaria, and then all over the whole world. And he picked these guys who were driven and passionate and had all the tools and everything they needed, and he walked with them, and he was their best friend, and he was their mentor, and he showed them how to live, and he showed them how to bring about the kingdom, and he showed them how to share life And then they're ready. And they're ready for him to be crowned king and set up on the throne and restore the world and bring about the end of the Roman Empire and the rule and the reign and the tyranny that was over all of them, that was ruining their lives, that was suppressing them and stopping them from becoming who that they could become. And all of a sudden things turn, man. They're having this meeting in this room and he's like telling them this is it. And he starts sharing with them that he was going to die. And man, you see this shift in their hearts and their attitudes. And then this one guy, Peter, and he's like, no, I won't allow it. I won't allow it. He was so passionate that Jesus wasn't going to die. He told him, you're wrong. I'm not going to allow this to happen. At that point, Jesus called him Satan, as good friends do. Get behind me, Satan. Get behind me. And we know that the next day, in the following 24 hours, Jesus suffered. Man, he went to the cross. He was brutally beaten and spit on and ridiculed and stripped and paraded through the city, then hung on a cross and died gasping for air. He suffocated to death, bloody and beaten and whipped and mistreated and abused. And that's what they saw their friend go through. The friend who they were willing to follow anywhere, the one who they believed would absolutely change and restore the world. And they saw him die. And they were deflated. Not only did they see him die, but this guy Peter, before the night as he was going through this, he denies him. Not just once, but he denies him 3 times. He says, I didn't even know him. I don't know who you're talking about. He cursed him. The Bible actually tells us that on the 3rd time he cursed him, Jesus was there and their eyes met. He looked into the eyes of Jesus. Now, you can feel pretty bad about yourself, your circumstance, your situation, and your future, but while you're cursing the Messiah and he looks into your eyes, it's going to have effect. So this guy's dejected, man. He's broken. They're all broken. Jesus is buried. What seemed to be a revolution, what seemed to be going the right direction, what seemed to have all of their hopes and dreams and their future tied up into it, came to a halt. And I like most of us do, read myself into the story. I read myself into the story and I'm like, wow. I thought my whole hope, my whole future, everything was tied up in here. And it ends like this. And I look and I say, man, I thought God had better things for me than this. I don't think this is the way it was supposed to work out. And something interesting happens to these guys. In this story, the way John, which was one of his followers, tells the story, and this is in John chapter 21. The way John tells this story, he tells it like this is how Jesus appeared and revealed himself to the disciples. This is after the resurrection, after Jesus was resurrected. He meets with them and he reveals himself to them. So in John chapter 21, it says in verse 1, it says, after this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, which was James and John, and 2 other disciples were together. And Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. Going fishing. It's interesting because when Jesus found his disciples, when he found Peter, Peter was fishing. The very thing Peter was doing the day Jesus found him is the exact place Peter returns to. See, after all of that, Peter said, I quit. I quit. It's too much. I quit. I can't handle the rejection. I can't handle the ridicule. I can't handle the work. I can't handle the responsibility. But most of all, I can't handle the loss. I quit. Going fishing. It's more than just fishing. I'm going back to the way things used to be. Now, there's something that I've discovered through doing this for a while, is you can quit, but you can't go back. You can always quit, but you can never go back. Life moves on. Things will never, ever, 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 ever be the same. You aren't the same. The circumstances aren't the same. The people who are in your life, they aren't the same. Things change. You can quit, but you can't go back. Peter said, I'm going fishing. And they said to him, we'll go with you. We quit too. We quit too. And they went out and they got in a boat that night and they caught nothing. These are professional fishermen. They know what they're doing. They had the old Zepco. They knew what was up. They knew what was going on. They weren't rookies, and they weren't out there hoping. They were professionals. But when they went back, it wasn't the same as it was before. They tried it, and they caught nothing. And just as day was breaking, man, and they'd been fishing all night, so, the smell was pretty rank. Just as day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples didn't know that it was Jesus. And he said to them, children, this is funny to me. I would think he called them children, but they didn't know who he was. And somebody was asking this morning, I didn't know these guys were that young. He was calling them children because they were kids. They were kids. He wasn't calling them his children like they knew who he was. And they answered him because they knew they were children out here in this boat. They knew they were kids. Children, do you have any fish? Now, talking about a slap in the face. Not only have we fished all night, not got nothing. And then there's this clown walks up in a white dress with a blue cape on and asks us if we caught anything. I don't know what Jesus was wearing. But just from the picture, man, why do we get Jesus in pastels? That's just not his look. I don't know. Maybe so. I don't know. I think he was more like a man's man. I think he was wearing like Red Wings, beat up jeans. I think, he was probably ripped up shirt, sleeves off. I don't know. And they answered him and said no, that they hadn't caught anything. And he said to them, cast the net on the other side of the boat and you will find some. Now, that's a weird thing, like some guy on the shore, hey, why don't you try on the other side? Like, oh, we never thought about that. Like we hadn't fished both sides of this boat all night. We hadn't thought about that. So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. The disciple who Jesus loved, this is funny because John's writing this and he writes about himself maybe as the disciple whom Jesus loved. The third person, that's funny. The disciple whom Jesus loved therefore said to Peter, it is the Lord. And when Simon heard it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work, and he threw himself into the sea, and the other disciples came in the boat. Like Peter didn't even wait on him. He's like, I'm out of here. And he's up there and he's with Jesus time. And they're probably like hauling nets and rolling stuff up and getting in, and Peter's already up there. And they got out on land and they saw a charcoal fire in the place, and with fish laid on it and bread. It's funny. Jesus already had the fish. It's already cooking. He wasn't waiting on them. It's like he's already cooking. I didn't really need you to catch fish. I just wanted to see if you could. And he says to him, bring me some of the fish that you caught. So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore full of large fish, about 153 of them. And although they were so many, the net was not torn. And Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. Now none of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. And Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and so with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus had revealed to the disciples that he was raised from the dead. Then he goes into this conversation with Peter. And he says, Peter, when they had finished breakfast, he says to Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And he said to him, yes, Lord, I do love you. And he said to him, feed my lambs. And he says it, asking that 3 times. And he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was grieved. And he said to him, 3rd time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Truly I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. Then John adds this he said, or someone does. This he said to show what kind of death he was to glorify God. And after saying this, he said to him, follow me. Follow me. Now here's what Peter turns around and says, he sees John walking behind him. And Peter and John had a thing, And he says, Peter turned and saw the disciple who Jesus loved following, the one who had been reclining at the table close to him, and had said, Lord, who is it that's going to betray you? Which was John. And he says, when Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, Lord, what about him? And Jesus said to him, if it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me. You follow me. See, he had quit and he had gone back, which we find ourselves in that place a lot of times. But even when you try to go back, there's something about God's love for us that is healing. There's something about God's love for us that repairs those things, that restores the broken places in our lives. See, Peter, he had every right for Jesus to not say, man, you're useless. You do this, you do this, you do this, you reject me, then you quit on me and you go back fishing. I've got to find somebody else. Have you ever thought maybe that Peter was the exact person Jesus was looking for to do what he needed him to do? Like this thing that was so bad that he quit on because of his loss and his circumstance and everything else. It may have been the one thing that so changed Peter to where he was never, ever going to quit. And if you read the rest of the story, man, Peter goes through everything. His life is brutal. It's brutal. He ends up being crucified. Legend says that Peter ends up being crucified upside down because he would not be crucified the way he saw Jesus crucified. After all of this, he has the strength to follow Jesus all the way to death. And I look at the story and I think, man, what is it that makes us want to quit? And I look and I'm like, my circumstance compared to their circumstance, I don't really have it that bad. But when we're in the middle of it, man, it seems like the end of the world, doesn't it? You remember high school, like when you'd have a girlfriend and she'd break up with you or cheat on you or whatever? You're like, it's the end of the world. It's the end of the world. And man, my daughter, she'll come home and her heart's just broken, and I'm like, I'm a dad. It's not the end of the world. You know, I have real problems. Compassion. But the truth is, it's real. It's as real to her as my problems are for me. It is the end of the world for her. I think as we get older, we get scope and we see, wow, man, those things weren't that big a deal. But we look at our circumstance and go, this is a big deal. And we get to that place where we just want to quit. We just want to give up. We want to throw in the towel. We're done. But I'm encouraged by the fact that God allowed them to quit, but wouldn't allow them to go back to where they came from. And in not being able to go back, they found themselves completely lost. Maybe you've already quit. Maybe you're now at that place where you're trying to go back and you can't. And you're finding yourself completely lost. Maybe you're finding yourself in a place you've never been. You don't even know what to do. I think at this place in our lives, when we get to that place, it's about the time Jesus usually walks up and goes, "You caught anything?" There's something that becomes a reality to us. God shows up and says, "Catching anything?" He comes up, God pulling a Dr. Phil. How's that working for you? And you say to him, it's not. It's not working at all. And man, a lot of people live most of their lives in this, I'm going to try that. That's not working. I'm going to try this. That's not working. I'm going to try this. And we run in circles and we do everything in the world. And Jesus just says, hey, throw the net on the other side of the boat. Maybe you've just been fishing all wrong. Come and follow me. Come and follow me. You still have a place. You still have a role. You still have meaning. You still have purpose. At last check, our world still needs restoration, does it not? Your life still matters. Your life still matters. I don't care where you're at in your walk. I don't care where you're at in your life and what you've been through, what you're going through. Your life is significant. It still matters. God still has you here. He still has a perfect plan for you. He still has you here to fulfill the life that He set out for you. He needs you to go fishing. He needs you to do what He called him to the first time when He said, come and I'll make you fishers of men. See, a lot of times we can't figure out what am I here for? If all this has turned out the way it is, I thought my life would mean more. Maybe it does, and maybe you just don't even see it. You know, I think when it all comes down to it, we all pretty much have the same purpose in life. And I believe that is this. I think we're here to make the world a better place. I think we can either bring about restoration or we can make the world a worse place. We can contribute to the chaos. I think we can look around and see the people in our lives as significant people that God has placed around us and say, I am here so their lives can be better. And if we ever get that, if we ever get that we are restorers, that we are a restoration generation, that we are a people who God has placed here to restore the world to the way God intended things to be, if we start to see ourselves in that role and we start to contribute to the world, we start to contribute to God's kingdom, when we start to contribute and we say, you know what? This is messed up, but I'm going to make it better. This person's life is messed up, but I can make it better. I can help this person. I can solve this problem. I can meet this need. And we start to look around, we start to see this, and when we do, we step into, and not in a religious way, we step directly into what God calls the kingdom of heaven. Maybe unintentionally. Maybe that wasn't what we were trying to do at all, but we just got sick of seeing the suffering and the hurt and the pain around us. Maybe we just step into it. Whatever it is that we step into, and whatever it is that we discover, I guarantee you that that's what's going to give life its meaning. It's what's going to make it all worth it. All the stuff you went through, all the bad times in your marriage, and all the things you went through with your kids, and all the things you've gone through in your job and in your finances and in everything else, and in the biggest losses of our life. We're going to look around and say, wow, those things shaped me and made me into who I am today. I have something to give. I have something to say. I have something to do. I have meaning and I have purpose. Right now, maybe you can't see that, which is where a lot of people are. It's where we all get. My word for you today, though, don't quit. You want to succeed? Don't quit. You want to win at life? Don't quit. No matter how bad it gets, don't quit. Don't quit. Can't go back anyway. So all you're going to do is take a detour, run in circles a while, and end up right back where you are. Don't quit. You may have to sit down and take a break. You may be out of the game. You may bench for a while, but don't quit. Don't ever stop. Don't ever stop. Commit. Commit yourself to what you know is real and true and right. Commit yourself to God. He's real and He is life. Commit yourself to your friends, to your family. Commit yourself to the people in your lives. I don't care if they don't commit back. That's not your responsibility. You can't control anybody. And the faster you realize that, the better your life's going to get. But you can handle who you are. Commit. Commit yourself to life. And just don't stop. Just don't quit. Just don't quit. I want to pray for you and then we'll dismiss. I know that there are a lot of you guys who are ready to quit right now. And maybe there's not anything anybody can say or do to change your circumstance. Maybe you're at that point where even what I'm talking to you about just is bouncing off of you. If you're in that place, man, we'd really like to talk with you. And so after the service today, man, over on this side of the room, me and Howard, and there'll be some people over there that would be happy to pray for you. We're not magic. We're not going to whip out a wand and change your life. But I do want to encourage you and I do want to pray for you. So if you're in that place, man, we would be glad to minister to you. Just guys will stand up with me and I want to pray and we'll just dismiss.